Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to the latest episode of the Genesys Cloud Community's Q&A show, the show where we answer your questions in the Genesys Cloud online community. My name is Matt Lawson. I'm your online community manager, and today we have a star-studded conclusion to our Above Average Joe's August. I mean, we all know Above Average Joe's August is something that we just started last episode, and it's sad it had to end after just 2 parts, but we have some great guests today who are going to answer questions from the community, and Maxime is going to continue the discussion about the new triggers that Genesys Cloud has. Now, these triggers, if you happen to come over from the Pure Connect side of things, these are going to be very similar to the custom handlers that you were used to on that system. So be sure to check out his demo. He goes into some great use cases, and then we get to answer questions from the community. And, well, I say we just get started. Hey, Maxime. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, and you?
Good, doing all right. Really excited for you to do your demo today. It's going to be a continuation of what we talked about last week. Real quick, can you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do at Genesys?
So I'm a part of a professional services team helping clients, to get on board on Genesys Cloud and just helping, configuring systems. And we're these days doing lots of migrations from different other systems. So it's a busy time for me.
Well, thank you so much for taking some of your time out of your schedule to do these demos. What are you going to be talking about today?
I would like to continue this discussion that my colleague Dean started last time about process automation triggers. It's a popular topic, and we see that this becomes more and more popular. But since it's kind of more complicated than the regular configuration, it usually takes some time to get in onto it, and just start using them. So that's why we're doing this segment.
All right, cool. So this is going to be your first of 3 demos. Is that correct?
Yeah. So just before doing the first demo, it's just a short introduction, right, of what process automation is about and what are these triggers can do, right? So first, you can find all this information on our developer center. You will see here that we're talking about so-called topics, right? Topics is basically an event in the system that you can subscribe to, right? And if you click on this link, available topics, you need to filter out only those that are applicable for process automation. You will see the very detailed information about each topic. So the first one I would like to demo is called user start. Well, as the name says, it will be triggered whenever the user of the system, agent, or any user of Genesys Cloud starts the outbound call or any other outbound interaction. So when this trigger comes to a workflow, it will send following JSON, right? So you can see a schema for this event. So all these attributes can be analyzed in the workflow, and then you can build a logic around it. Just for this demo, I built a kind of a simple workflow. And workflow is a type of flow in Architect that you can trigger based on either event trigger, right, that I just talked about, or you can just execute them using our API. So let's open the one that is called Outbound Check Queue, right? So what does it do? Some clients, they want all the outbound calls to be always associated with a queue, even if this call was manually dialed by an agent. So how can we do it? Well, with this trigger, we can check if there is a queue associated, right, with the call. And if the queue is associated, then we will allow it, right? But if the queue was not associated with this interaction, then we can disconnect it. And so here's the workflow that basically performs the logic that I just talked about. one important thing about workflows, it's not a inbound call flow, right? Or any type of inbound flows. You cannot directly interact with, perform the same actions that you would normally do in your inbound flow. So you cannot disconnect directly. So you have to use data action. So you can see here, I have a data action created using our Genesys Cloud API that performs exactly as what it says. It disconnects this interaction. So now if let me switch to agent interface, right? I'll show you how it works. So let's say I want to dial a phone number. And as you can see here, I'm not selecting any queue, right? I'm just dialing some random outbound number, phone number without selecting queue. Click dial button. And you see the system right away disconnected the call, right? Because I didn't provide any queue. Now I'll do another test. So this time I'll go and create a call on behalf of the queue, right? With the same phone number. And you can see that this time it was a success, right? Call went through. So that proves that this workflow works, and it allows to control the way agents are able to make outbound calls, right? Just talking about how can you or other, any other clients could use this, right? So this gives you more flexibility on controlling the way agents dial phone numbers and what they dial. Yes, of course, you can control the phone number in a dial plan. That would become more flexible, right? Because you can have a data table where you can specify a list of phone numbers that are not allowed for agent to dial. You can consult a database or some external API before calling this number. It just gives you another level of flexibility of controlling outbound calls. Next demo today is we'll see how we can use another topic that is user.end, right? So user end event is triggered at the end of the conversation. So when the call comes to an agent, right, and it ends, this is where the system will trigger this event. So I would like to show you one way how it can be used. And again, like you can look at in our documentation here at the event schema, it explains what it will send to you when this event happens. So then you can configure your flow. So that's by the way the flow that the trigger that I created in the system. Right now, the trigger creation is all done through APIs. We have a beta where this ability to create triggers will be added to the interface. But right now, you have to use our APIs to create triggers. So you can see here, it shows the ID of the workflow that will be triggered when this event happens, the topic, right, the user end. I say here that I would like the data to be sent as a JSON. And also you can see here matching criteria. So it's inbound voice interaction. So let's look at the workflow itself. So the name of the workflow says change not responding to away. So what does it do? Imagine a situation when the agent is available, but for some reason didn't answer the call, right? So normally the status of the agent will change to not responding. And I hear that some clients that would like to change that behavior. They would like agent status to automatically change to, let's say, away instead of not responding. So this workflow will allow to do exactly that. So here's the logic of this workflow. So I read the JSON file, JSON object right from the event, and analyze the duration, interacting duration of this call. If it's equal to 0, so it means that agent did not answer. So that's the time to change the user presence, right? And I use another data action here to change user presence. So this one corresponds to away in my system. Okay, so now I have an agent interface open, and we'll see how this workflow works. So I make a test call. As you can see, it is now ringing in my agent interface, but I will not answer this because I want to see that instead of going to not responding, it should change my status to away. And that's exactly what's happened. You can see my agent status right now is off queue, and my presence is now set to away. So instead of the standard one not responding. So that gives you an idea how you can use this trigger with this specific topic. All right, my third demo will use after call work topic. So this topic is generated whenever the agent enters after call work and clicks done. And I would like to use this topic to automate the redials, let's say in case when the client is busy. So how would I do that? You can see I created another trigger in the system. You can see the topic name is after call work, and it points to workflow that will perform this logic. And you can see that since we're talking about callbacks, this logic will be triggered when it's when the media type is voice and the direction is outbound. Let's look at the workflow. What does it do? One of the attributes of this event is the wrap-up code itself. One important thing that the system sends not the name of the wrap-up code, but the ID in the system. So you need to check using your API, what's the ID of your wrap-up code in the system that you would like to automate. So let's say this wrap-up code is actually says busy, right? If that's like the case, there's a logic here that uses data action to schedule a callback in half an hour. So if, let's say, agent selects a busy wrap-up code, clicks done, system will automatically reschedule this callback in half an hour. Now I'm back at the agent interface. So I created a callback that's waiting right now in the queue. So I'll change my status on queue. And you can see it's coming to me. So imagine that I click begin call and the client said, by the way, sorry, I can't talk to you right now. Or let's say, this phone number went straight to voicemail, right? Now, as an agent, I can select a wrap-up code that matches this situation. And I created one that's called busy, right? So when I click on this busy wrap-up code and click done, the system will automatically create a scheduled callback in half an hour. And then I can click and call back and just continue doing whatever I need to do as an agent. So I just switched to supervisor interface, right? And I'm right now looking at the scheduled callbacks view. And you can see here that there is a callback scheduled for in half an hour. So that's a confirmation that this automation worked.
Well, thanks a lot for walking us through that. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think that'll be really helpful because when I was watching what Dean was talking about last time, I was thinking myself kind of like, what are the different situations this can be used? So thank you so much for bringing that to life for us.
My pleasure. Yeah, I just want to add that, those process automation triggers, it's a great tool. I feel that it really helps to expand the feature set of the system. And for those who worked with Genesys Pure Connect product, you probably remember custom handlers. So I feel that this would be the replacement for custom handlers. And I just want to mention that we keep adding new available topics. So just keep checking the release notes on Genesys Cloud, and also this process automation page on our developer center, because you will see that quite often we add new topics that will help you to achieve your goals.
Okay, cool. Well, Maxime, if you have just a few more minutes, I'd love for you to hang around because I think we have some other Joes who are going to hop on the call, and I think we'd be wasting time if we didn't answer some questions together. Are you in?
I'm in.
Let's do it, bud.
When the online community has questions and no one else can help, there's one group who can answer the call. They're pro services ready for hire. The Above Average Joes. Meet Patrick Johnson, Senior Principal Pro Services Consultant. Meet George Canal, an expert with Genesys for over 23 years.
Meet Dean Thames and his canine assistant Lulu, pros in enterprise technology for 25 years. Meet Maxim Svetov, a pro services guru who speaks 3 languages and has worked with contact centers for 19 years.
All right, everybody, we have 3 out of the 4 Joes here today. We're going to answer some questions in the community, and then I don't know, what is it? Infamous request, unpopular request. George wanted to do some Stump the Expert with us. So anyway, real quick, Maxime, we already met you earlier because we did the demo. Dean, you were with us last week, and George, with 5,000 community discussions, I think everybody knows who you are. Thank you for being a part of the Genesys Pro Service organization and for sharing your time with us. Let's answer some questions. First question comes from Alistair, who wants to know about canceling Genesys Cloud recording requests for a Salesforce email routing with Genesys Cloud for Salesforce. They write, is there a method to cancel a routing request, say in Salesforce Flow, after a request has been made to route a Salesforce email? There are several cases where this might be useful, such as an agent closing the associated case in the course of handling another interaction for the same contact. I was just on support earlier today, and I think I ended up going to 3 different queues. So yeah, something like this could be a lot of fun, a lot of help. What do you guys think? Maxime, Dean, any replies?
In Salesforce, you have process flows, right, where you can specify a logic of what you want to do with your interaction, right? One of the actions would be probably do nothing, right, or just terminate it. So that's one potential idea. That's something I would suggest to test, right, in a dev environment. Another way to disconnect it at the source, well, in this case, source would be the Genesys itself, right? So that you would be able to do it using in the architect, right? In the architect flows, either email flow or maybe even workflow.
Cool. Makes sense to me. Let's do another question. All right. I feel like this next question is kind of a ghost from the past, because not too long ago, we had a question about somebody who was trying to find a fax machine in their office. Hey, George, thanks for joining us. And today we have somebody who is trying to set up a fax in Genesys Cloud. Sardar, sorry if I mispronounced that right. I need help with fax to email setup in Genesys Cloud. We have similar set in Pure Connect. Welcome to Genesys Cloud. But I need to know how to set it up in cloud. We receive fax from customers that hit our mailbox and converts that to an email. This should be the flow. Resource Center beyond, we couldn't find any documentation. Thanks in advance. Maxime, glad you were here because you mentioned you helped a customer specifically with this. So what kind of advice do you have?
Yeah, so it's not something that kind of documented because, I guess faxes are not that popular anymore. So you can create an inbound email flow, right? And so the email address for this flow can be then set up as the personal email for kind of a dummy user, right? So then you point a phone number to this dummy user, and you can enable this functionality to send a fax message to email. So then there'll be like a chain reaction. Call comes in to a user, fax triggers the email to this user personal user email address, and this goes to email flow, right? And here we go. I know it's not a full solution, but it's how it works.
All right, cool. Now that George is here, our team is expanding. Let's go ahead and maybe do another question. George, welcome to the show. This next question is about content search, multiple of the same interaction. It comes from Robert. Robert says, hi all, just wondering whether this is a bug or it's intentionally set up like this. When we use the content search, all of our message interactions seem to be appearing for every single sentence sent by an agent, not just a full interaction. When we search voice queues, they all appear normally, as in each interaction only gets one line, but message interactions come through like this. and they send in a nice attachment. I think you can see by the date and time, we're led to believe it's all the same interaction. The user's name has kindly been scratched off. These are all the same interactions, but it's showing multiple times. Why are message interactions showing duplicates while voice are showing a complete interaction? Maxime, ultimately, I know we've talked about how this is something they probably need to open a case for, but you had some troubleshooting tips that you wanted to recommend. What have you got for them?
Yeah, looking at this screenshot, it's not that clear if it's actually the same interaction, right? So I would suggest at least to start by adding conversation ID column. So if conversation ID is different for each line, then it's not the same conversation. These are all different conversations. It's not clear why there's that short. It's not clear why they all come in at the same time. Is it some sort of a testing? Is it some sort of a bug? Clearly, client will have to continue troubleshooting this one, but I would really curious to see the conversation IDs. Like, is it really the same one?
Gotcha. George, I know you just joined a little late to this, but anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how we thread messages and emails, all digital type of interactions, so that if you have the full body of the conversation in each message, if you will, like email, you can include the rest of the message, or you can not include it as an agent. So if a message comes through on a particular email conversation and you search for a particular phrase, you're probably going to come up with a whole bunch of different messages, because each one of those messages could have the same information in it. And I could see how that particular scenario could happen just based on a single conversation ID, but 20 messages with that same conversation because of the way we do threading. I can't swear to it without actually seeing those individual messages, but it's possible that each one has the same information and is found every time they do the search.
Cool. Thanks, George. This next question is about migrate divisions. It comes from Raphael. I'm just going to quote this because there's a little bit of a translation issue. Raphael writes, "Hello, people. Need to know if existing a possible demigration, one all division to other org. Is this possible in Genesys Cloud? I did not find any documentation about this. Can someone help?" George, you immediately knew what Raphael was talking about, what he's looking for. I know you want to take first crack at this, and then we'll see what everybody else has to add. But George, take it away.
Y para Rafael, sí es posible. And so here I have the Developer Center CX as code documentation. So go to developer.genesys.cloud, just type in CX as code at the top, and it'll pop up the documentation for our migration platform, if you will. It's built on Terraform, and it is specifically designed to migrate all the settings of various types from one organization to another. So Raphael was asking about how to migrate the division information. And yes, that is one thing that's possible using CX as code. And for that, I won't go into all the details here, but there is the Genesys Cloud Provider Registry. And within this registry on Terraform, this explains all the things that you can do under the current version of CX's code. There's a documentation link up here, and I'm just going to type in division. And we'll see that under resources, it has this particular one for divisions or auth divisions. And you can see the API usage. It's able to look at the divisions, be able to get the divisions, put the divisions, delete divisions, give some example usage, all that kind of stuff. So if I were going to migrate divisions from one organization to another, I would use CX's code. It takes some setup. You have to install different pieces. You have to be using Terraform. All of the documentation is there on the Developer Center, and there are videos. We have DevCast videos where John Carnell, the head developer, explains how to use it pretty well. There's a lot of help for it in the forum on the Developer Center, so I would give that a shot.
Cool.
And one thing I think I would make sure we clarify is that was a division endpoint. If the object is to move all of the contents of the division as well, there's other resources that would need to be incorporated into that action. But yeah, that's definitely the way to go.
All right, perfect. I think we just have a few more questions selected here. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Managing Azure SCIM token expiry. I'll be honest, it's rare that when we do a show like this, that we get so much chatter about a question that seems so straightforward. Managing Azure SCIM token expiry. Hi there. Prem wants to know how others manage the Azure SCIM token expiry. We have set to token duration to 450 days, which works fine, no issue. My question here is how to manage the renewal of tokens if you have multiple orgs. Is it possible to check the current expiry date of the token? What do you guys think?
So the issue is related to, on the Azure side, the client secret has to be, or the token has to be added manually. It's a literal value on that application side. And what we're expecting is an application that can refresh that token whenever it needs to get one. So it's good that you can definitely extend the TTLs, how I think of it, but yes, expiry way out into the future. But if you want to manage that against multiple different orgs or dynamically, there's probably some process that you would need to put into place to handle that, right? Either store that TTL or come up with a mechanism to cache that token on your own and then go update them.
Yeah, I've been looking at some of the documentation, trying to remember exactly how the refresh token functionality works. It's mainly for code authorization grant type tokens. I'm not sure it would work for the Azure token in the background, but just a quick look. In case it would apply, I'd have to play with it to figure it out for sure. But you've got on the Resource Center under auth, platform authorization, it talks about refresh tokens, something we added in 2020. And it allows the backend to request a new token by refresh instead of having to request a completely new token each time.
Cool, guys. One question that I picked out because it came in from Monique and I tried to help her and I failed, but she was curious, is there a place in Genesys Cloud CX documentation where I can see a list of all icons and their meanings? Monique writes, hello, there are so many icons in use in Genesys Cloud CX. I'm wondering if there's a topic in the documentation that lists every single icon in use, their meaning. If not, I'd love to see it. Something along the call controls icon. And I thought this was a really neat page. I've done a search. I'm not coming up with anything comprehensive. Thanks so much. Well, Monique, you and I were thinking the same thing because in my reply, I, of course, shared the call control icon. So sorry, I was not helpful. If anything at all else, I was redundant. But I did want to make sure you were aware how I found that. I went to the Genesys Knowledge Network and did a search for icons. And when I was doing a search, I saw they have different icons for different kinds of they have different kinds of documentation for different icons. When I was talking about this with the group, Maxime brought up a really good point. So to our knowledge, we do not have a comprehensive list, but I think Maxime has a good idea of kind of why, and I'll just let you take it from here, Maxime.
So we have separate articles for different parts of the interface. And so, for example, if you want to know about icons that are used for reports, right, for the views, just search for a view documentation on Resource Center, and it would list all the icons and all the parts of the interface that are related to this reporting, right? And the same applies to all other parts of the interface. So we don't have one overarching article that would list all the icons because it's probably it's going to be a long article, right? It would be all over the place. So that's why it's more focused on each individual interface in the system.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll add, and Monique, I don't think it ever hurts to give this feedback to our team. They love receiving feedback. When you are in a Resource Center article, like I just, following what Maxime was saying, I just looked up something and kind of found this. But what you can do is, like, for instance, on the call control, you could always say, was this article helpful? And you could say no. That doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily held against our team. But if you do say no, what it does is it gives you the ability to leave feedback. So what you could do is say no and then provide your email and the feedback. For instance, I'd love to see a list of all of the icons in the system. Maybe our documentation team could work on putting something together like that for you. Great. Thanks for the question. What do you guys think? You want to do one more and then we can close out?
I think you should go to Dean and do a Stump the Expert session with him.
I think I'm easy to stump.
It is above average Joe's month, above average Joe's August here in the community. And one of the ways that George and I became fast friends was on an old segment called Stump the Expert. The idea is we would ask questions where there were no answers provided. And our whole idea was we don't have the best answer, but we at least wanted to try to point the person in the right direction. With that being said, the following questions and answers cannot be held against us in the court of end-of-year reviews. This is simply to try to give somebody help who has not received any thus far in the community. The guests actually have no idea what questions I'm about to ask them. So let's get started. ININ outbound number could not be dialed. This question comes in 12 days ago, not a single reply. Let's see what you all think. Hi. Anybody know the use case for ININ outbound number could not be dialed remaining callable? I'm going to make an idea to make the number not callable based on the 404 error, but I wasn't sure if there was a scenario I wasn't accounting for, maybe with multiple carriers where you'd want to call it again. Can someone think of a reason to keep this callable? What do you all think? Any advice on this question?
Can you
I'd
put
love
that?
to see a deeper example of it. Dean, have you ever seen anything like that in the field?
Well, I'm trying to think if the use case is to make it where a Genesys Cloud agent was not able to, if there was a reason to prevent them from calling a number, is that what we think the use case is?
It looks like it's from Outbound Dialer, is my guess. And it was an entry in a contact list. It attempted to call the number and it got back an unknown number. Probably a SIT from the telco,
Okay.
the standard special information tone telling it the number you were dialing could not be found, something like that. Instead of it saying has been disconnected or some other hard failure code, it's a 404, which just means it could not be found at that time.
Yeah.
And that is kind of thrown up there by the internet side as well. We couldn't find it this time, but it could be because DNS is down, or at the telco side, it could be because somebody hid the number somehow, or the telco that they're trying to reach is not communicating properly or whatever. I'll give you an example. Maybe somebody just got a new cell phone, got a new phone number for some reason, and they've not activated the phone yet, but they went and they put in the new phone number on a website as their contact number, and that got thrown into somebody's database. Well, it may not be found today, but it could be found tomorrow. So you don't mark it as a permanent could not call. That's my thought.
All right, let's go ahead and do another question. I like this one. 13 days ago, not a single reply. Hubba hubba, give it to me. Bring on the pain. Agent utilization and queue routing. Neil came in with a whopper. Neil reports, I have a queue that only does chat interactions. Each agent has utilization set for a max of 3 chats. In the example below, the manager of the department does not like how agent B would get the next inbound chat and agent C would get the next chat after that. But agent A doesn't have any active chats and does not get either of those new chats. This is due to the idle counter starting at the end of the last handled interaction. So we have a breakdown. Any suggestions on a possible configuration that could use the interaction start time, or at least not pile up on chats on one agent before offering them to others? Pretty cool question. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's going to route to the agent that's been off or has the longest time since last handle. There should not be a time since last handle of 900 seconds on that agent if they're currently handling interactions, unless they're the first ones of the day and they just haven't disconnected yet. It was the only thing I could think of. So yeah, I'm not picturing how you could get to that situation.
The thing that I would recommend is that they look at the total amount of activity, handle activity over the course of the day relative to the amount of availability that the agents in that group had. And ideally it would flatten out, right? So it's not so much that agent B has 2 chats right now, it's that agent A, B, and C all have a similar amount of chats over the course of that day, assuming they have similar availability.
This one requires investigation, but we also have this global configuration at the org level that's called routing includes agent presence, right? And if it's turned off, right, by default, then interactions are routing based on time since last interaction. Whereas if you enable routing includes agent presence, then the interaction will go to an agent who is sitting in idle available the longest. So maybe that is something that they have enabled in their work, right? So, and that's why it maybe somehow affects the routing decision.
All right, let's do one final question here. This one is about web messaging occupancy. It's holding a record for this episode, 14 days old, not a single reply. Hi, we want to send effective handling time in 15-minute intervals to a third-party WFM solution. While web messaging and web chat interactions will automatically go on hold when another interaction is in focus, this does not happen when the interaction is disconnected and ACW is counting. We are counting ACW from one interaction at the same time as T-Talk of the other, meaning we double the handling time. Is there a way to somehow get the exact focus time of an interaction? Thanks so much. Guys, I know we aren't exactly, WFM solution experts, but what do you think?
Unfortunately, there's nothing built into Genesys Cloud to specifically sort out the roll-up of all the different interaction handle times. I've been working with this a lot off and on over the years, and basically in the agent performance views, for example, you can see the different handle times for different segments or intervals. If you look at just phone handle time, great, that tells you how long they're on a call. But if they place an outbound call while they're in ACW on the first call, then yeah, you got doubled up time. Same thing for messaging. If you're doing email and chat and messaging and phone calls, you get, I've seen an agent have 2 or 3 hours of handle time during a 1 hour segment of time. So the only way I've seen to be able to try and sort it out is to actually go in and run a complicated type of calculation based upon an export of the data, or however you're going to be getting the data out of the system, and just take the individual interactions that that agent was part of, and you just have to cancel out the times that were crossover. It's crazy. I don't know of a way to do it well. That's a bad answer, but one I know of.
At least it's an answer. That's what we love about this segment. At least we pointed them in a direction, maybe not a good direction, maybe not the right direction, but a direction. Guys, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun recording with you today. I can't wait to record with you again in a future episode. All right, everyone, that concludes Above Average Joe's August. Quick reminder, we have trivia going on in the community, and we're going to start doing it every month. That's right. Once a month, we will have at least one trivia event. So be sure to join our community. Check out Genesys Casual. You don't want to miss the chance to win a fabulous prize or the chance to ask the Above Average Joes a question of your choice. A lot of reasons to join the community. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here for now. See you in September, where I'm sure we'll have more guests, more demos, and of course, more of your questions. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in for this week's episode. We hope it was helpful and maybe a little bit entertaining. Each week, our host and experts review community discussions and debate what content to discuss, so your voice matters. Did we miss something? Do you have a question for the show? Let us know. Join the conversation at the Genesys online community. As a Genesys customer or partner, you can create an account. Just click the sign-in button found on most pages and follow the necessary instructions to create an account. Also, feel free to email us at qashow@genesys.com. We'd love to hear from you. If this is your first episode, welcome. You can view our entire archives. Go to the Helpful Links panel found on most community pages and find the QA show archive that interests you.
Also, check out the community's prize wall for current contests and previous winners.
We appreciate your support of the show and the community. Cheers!